Hey everyone, so today we'll be taking a look at the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 beta on the ASUS ROG Ally, the GPD Win Max 2, as well as the Ayaneo Air 1S. Now this should be an interesting kind of battle because the way I've set it up is the ASUS ROG Ally is obviously stock memory setting, so it's the 6400 megahertz RAM. But it's set up either with 5GB or 8GB of VRAM, and we'll show that in testing. Now for the GPD Win Max 2, it's set up with 6400 MHz transfer RAM instead of the 7500 MHz. And then finally we have the Ayaneo Air 1S with 32GB of RAM total, 8GB dedicated to the VRAM, and it's got 7500 MHz mega transfers RAM. So with the faster RAM, theoretically that should allow in better performance because it's essentially acting as your GPU RAM basically. So the faster that is, the faster throughput there is, the faster and better performance you should get. And as we can see, or as we will see, that is the case with the Ayaneo Air 1S running 7500 MHz RAM. And we'll see with the ASUS ROG Ally the limitations of running 16GB versus 32GB on the Ayaneo Air 1S or 74GB on the GPD Win Max 2. Before we get into all that,
where is bro's aim?
I wanted to give a shout out to UGREEN. If you're previous viewers of the channel, you'll know that UGREEN has been a sponsor, not monetarily, but they just send over items for me to kind of check out and review. So they sent over an item that I got honestly a couple days ago, and it's their 300 watt USB-C charger Nexode GAN 5-port charger. So it's got 4 USB-Cs and 1 USB-A. So it's not 300 watt at once, it's 140 watt max. So the idea with this thing is it's not a travel charger, it's a heavy brick. It's got a full like kind of fat plug, it's not just a small little plug. And I'll be showing footage and kind of whatever in the background. But anyway, so the idea with this thing, and honestly why it's perfect for me and perfect for this video, is because I'm testing all these devices. So I'm testing the ASUS ROG Ally, the GPD Win Max 2, and the Ayaneo Air 1S. So the ASUS ROG Ally needs at least 65 watt to be able to go to the Boost Turbo 30 watt. The GPD Win Max 2 calls for a 100 watt charge, so I can get that out of this no problem. And then the Ayaneo Air 1S, I believe, calls for a 65 watt charge as well, but that only tops out at 25 watt max. Anyway, so the GPD Win Max 2, I can max out, like I've had up to like 50 plus watts, and this is able to support that, no problem, all three at the same time. The ASUS ROG Ally is able to boost up, and yeah, it's honestly perfect. So I had this one nice kind of charger block on my desk, and then I can pick and choose what I want to charge. I can charge my laptop with 140 watts. So for the MacBook Pro 16, you'll get 30 minutes charge time, and that will net you 56% on the battery. I believe it's something like an hour will get you about like 70+%. So that kind of quick burst charge, if you just need to get through like half a day or through the rest of the kind of day and you only have 30 minutes or whatever. The one thing I will say is that this charger does come with a cable, a nice length braided cable, and that's amazing. My only gripe is that you have to spend so much money to get a damn cable in the box, because I really would appreciate that their lower end chargers like the 65 watts and things like that, or the robot chargers, the RoboGANs. I wish they included at least just a small, like even if it's a 1-foot cable. That would kind of set them apart from the competition, because there's not many charging companies that give out good quality cables with their charging accessories. Anyway, so it's a little bit overkill for a lot of people, I will admit, but if you're kind of into this and you need a lot of charging ports, if you need it for your phone, your tablet, your MacBook, your laptop, whatever, you're gonna have basically all the power at your hands. But anyway, so this is kind of going on a bit longer than I kind of intended to, but again, just a huge shout out to UGREEN. All the links will be listed down below. They'll be listed as affiliate links. I'll show the US and Canadian sites, and then I'll just kind of list their website and a couple other products that I've shown in this video as well, just in the B-roll. Anyway, so we'll get back into the video proper. Okay, so keeping an eye on the frame rate here, I'm going to start the frame rate average benchmark run So the number on the left will be frame rate average, number in the middle is 1% low, and the number on the right is 0.1% low, so just keeping that in mind. Again, this is no upscaling, just raw 1920 by 1080p performance at balanced graphics settings to see if we can get a little bit better of a picture out of this as opposed to like Modern Warfare 2 or something. So we'll see here, I'll restart my frame time counter, frame rate counter, and we will switch on FSR 2.1 set to, yeah, we'll just have it set to balanced right out of the gate. So we'll apply that, 1920 by 1080. And we can see here that we are now comfortably over 60 FPS at least. So let's see what happens with those 1% lows and the average as well. But as we can see here, I'll restart my frame time counter because I died. Okay, there we go. Same thing, FPS average, 1% low, 0.1% low. So we can see here that we are staying comfortably above 60 FPS. So I'm going to run around the same area. Performance is actually pretty solid, because if you remember with Modern Warfare 2, I always found on the ASUS ROG Ally, when you kicked in AMD FSR 2.1, I always found that there was quite a bit of drops in the 1% lows and like the smoothness and everything. So we can see here that kind of the way to go for that game for Modern Warfare 2 was to play with AMD FSR 1.0. Now it's a worse kind of upscaling method. It's temporal, it's not like, it doesn't have any of the machine learning, any of that stuff like that. So yeah, we can see here that we're actually getting pretty damn good performance. And again, I'll reset the frame rate counters there, and so we can see that, yeah, the frame rate frame time graph, the line kind of moving up and down there, is pretty darn solid. The 1% lows and 0.1% lows are pretty darn good as well. We are staying above 60 for the 1% lows, and the 1.1% lows, sorry, are very close as well. And we are comfortably above 60 going into 80s. Now keep in mind, this is kind of useless on the GPD Win Max 2 because it only has a 60 hertz screen, unfortunately. So what you could do with the GPD Win Max 2, because it has a 60 hertz screen, is you could basically just crank up those texture quality settings and just get an amazing looking experience while still maintaining 60 FPS. But of course, we're comparing everything with VSync off, frame rate limit caps all turned off, everything like that. Just so we can get a good like-for-like comparison and the high frame rate gameplay. Okay, so we're on the ASUS ROG Ally now, memory integrity, core integrity, isolation, whatever, turned off. We're 1920 by 1080, no upscaling. Same preset of balanced, and you can see we're running in the 40s here, even in the interior scenes. So we'll just kind of push out to the exterior and we'll see what happens. Restart the frame time or frame rate counter, and you can see that the frame time is kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. And you can see that the averages are, they're above 30. I mean, the 0.1% low, they're not, but very close to. So let's turn on some FSR 2.1 and we'll see what we get out of it. So now we can see here with even FSR 2 set to quality, we're getting close to 60. I'm just going to try and be a little bit useful and cap this flag here. But yeah, like, you're going to see that with FSR going from quality to even performance, it's not going to offer too much of a difference, even with FSR 1.0. We can see here that we are dipping below 60. The FPS average, the 1% low and the 0.1% lows, we are above 30 though, so that was nice. So we'll go down to FSR 2.1 and we'll go to performance. So restarting the frame rate counters, we can see that we are now above 60 in the interiors again, but you can see it's not yielding as much results as we saw on the GPD Win Max 2, I believe. We'll be playing the footage back all together, and we can see then the kind of the direct comparisons there. But just in playing right now, like, yeah, it's not offering much better experience over FSR quality, going down to FSR performance on FSR 2.1. So yeah, you can see we are getting like pretty well above 60 FPS average. Oh, and I got knifed in the back, love it, nice. Okay, so we'll go to FSR 1, and we'll see here that even at FSR 1 quality, so we can see here that yes, we are getting above 60. The 1% lows and 0.1% lows, they aren't hitting close to 60 like in the GPD Win Max 2 was, but we'll kick it down to performance after I die just to see the difference. Again, this is FSR 1 quality. You can see that the frame time counter, the frame time the line, it's not as spiky now as compared to like FSR 2.1, and obviously no upscaling. Anyway, so we'll go to performance now and see if we can actually get over, I don't know, maybe a 70 FPS average. So we're in the exterior, it should be a little bit harder to run theoretically, and yeah, you can see that we are getting above 70 FPS average. Now, obviously, if we were to drop the settings down to like minimum or basic or whatever, we likely would get a lot higher FPS. But because we are on the balanced settings, it's still a kind of a VRAM heavy situation here. So we're not getting like those 80, 90, whatever FPS that we were seeing on the GPD Win Max 2, I believe, doing a FSR 1 performance. Alright, so now we're back with the ASUS ROG Ally running at 8 gigabytes of VRAM versus the 5 gigabytes of VRAM. So as we can see here in the interior scenes, we're actually going above 50, and in the exterior scenes here, we're doing a fresh run here, so I'll try to stay alive for as long as I can. But you can see that we are getting, the averages are around the high 40s. 50, but I would say that yes, the performance is markedly better on 8 gigabytes versus the 5 gigabytes VRAM. However, in a lot of cases, let's see if, yeah, there we go, suck it. All right. Anyway, so a lot of times running 8 gigabytes of VRAM is not a good time because you'll have only 8 gigabytes for your system RAM. And doing that in certain games, or in a lot of games actually, you'll be limited with certain graphic settings, you'll be limiting yourself for performance in a lot of cases. So anyway, so I'll do one more kind of, if I don't kill myself, I'll do one more little run here, just at native resolution. And yeah, like you can see that honestly, I can't remember too well, but it does seem, it's definitely on par with the GPD Win Max 2, I would say. Whether it's better, I'm not sure. I think it's about the same, but we'll be playing the footage in the background, kind of overlaying it and doing the comparisons and everything. So now we're going to kick on FSR 2.1. Same thing, we'll just start off with quality. So here we go, FSR 2.1, show more, and quality, and apply. Now, we should see a little bit better of a performance increase, hopefully, with the 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So you can see here with the quality, we are getting, if I don't die here, above 60 in the exterior scenes. Whether it's going to be consistently above 60, we'll see. I prefer my games to look a little bit decent at the same time. I don't really care about getting high refresh rate. I would enjoy it a lot of the time, but I'm not going to be plugged in all the time trying to get the highest refresh rate. So anyway, so we'll go down to FSR performance. So we can see here that, yeah, like in the exterior scenes with FSR 2 performance, nice, there we go, we are getting steadily above 60, I would say. You can see in the average there, it's running at 66. With the 1% lows, not too far behind 60. The 0.1% low running at 44, that's not too bad. It's above 30, so I'm fine with that, to be quite honest. Now we'll go down to FSR 1. Okay, anyway, so you can see that we are getting 60s to 70s again, so I'd say we're getting like pretty well the same performance that we were getting at FSR 2 performance that we're getting in FSR 1 quality. Again, the FSR 1 upscaling isn't going to be as great, and you're definitely going to notice that in the things like the fine lines, like the aliasing and everything. But honestly, it doesn't look that bad on the screen. Like, it's not that bad looking. Obviously, blown up, it's going to look a lot worse. Anyway, so we're going to kick it down to FSR 1 performance. So keep in mind, we're still running balanced settings. If I really cared, I'd drop it down to 720, or I'd drop it down to the graphics settings down to basic or minimum, just to try and get the highest FPS possible. But you can see here, FSR 1 performance, I am noticing it is a little bit blurrier to the eye, and in motion it does kind of, I don't know, but it's still definitely playable for me. I have no problem playing this. But yeah, so we can see here that FSR 1 performance, we are getting above 70 FPS average, just kind of running around the map. This is probably one of my longer lives here. Let's run up here. We're getting, yeah, like, we're getting pretty darn good FPS, I would say, for the graphics quality settings that we're running. With the Ayaneo Air 1S, I have this updated to the 7500 megahertz RAM update, unlike the GPD Win Max 2, which I believe is running at 65 or 6400 megahertz, and the ASUS ROG Ally, which is running at 6400 megahertz. So we're going to see basically the benefits of having faster RAM and what's that going to translate into kind of gameplay wise. Fresh run here, no upscaling. Interior scenes, we're getting close to 60 FPS. Now this is the high-rise map again, so it's the 24/7 playlist. Let's get outside and see what happens. Okay, so now we can see with the FPS. I'll restart my counter here if I don't die. Okay, so in the exterior scenes, no upscaling. We are still getting close to 60 FPS, but we're definitely not getting over and above 60 FPS. But yeah, so it's honestly not too bad. And if you're a stickler for not playing with any upscaling, I mean, you could drop the settings and I guarantee you could get a solid 60 FPS lock. But let's kick on some upscaling. So we're going to do FSR 2.1 again, and we're going to go to quality first, and we'll see what happens with that. So I did do this kind of test earlier, but we'll kind of do it again here. So we can see the interior scenes, we are now getting 60 FPS and above. So we'll go to the exterior and see what happens. And again, this is FSR 2.1 quality, balanced graphics settings, 25 watt. We're doing 25 watt across the board for all the tests. But yeah, so you can see here that we're getting well and above 60 FPS just with FSR 2 quality. So let's restart the counter here and we'll do one more run with FSR 2.1 quality, and then we'll switch down to performance, and then we'll go down to FSR 1. Hopefully we can complete this all in the same match. So our 2.1 performance and see what that kind of gives us performance-wise. Alright, so you can see in the exterior scenes that we are still getting, well, damn, like well and above 80 FPS, touching 90 at times, but you can see the average is sitting around 85 FPS. Mind you, I did start off in the interior scenes, but we are touching 90 and above and in the exterior here. We'll do FSR 1 and we'll go to quality and see what we get with that. You can see here that, yeah, we're getting like that. We're getting above 90, close to 100 FPS, but we are still getting, we're still getting well and above 80, I would say, for the most part. But you can see that, yeah, this is just FSR 1 quality, and we're getting basically FSR 2 performance levels of FPS. Again, this is kind of useless on the Ayaneo Air 1S because we're running at 60 hertz. But anyway, so after this death, I'm going to go to FSR 1 performance, and then we'll see what that gets us. I guarantee we'll probably be getting over 100 FPS, but we'll see. FSR 1 performance. Apologies. Yeah, so you can see we're well and above over 100 FPS in the interior scene, so I'm just going to restart my frame rate counter here. There we go. Okay, and we'll do a little run around outside, see what happens. Okay, so you can see that, yeah, we're still above 100 FPS even outside. I wouldn't be surprised if it dips below. So yeah, we're getting above 100 FPS. So again, like with the ROG Ally, if you wanted to run at these settings, you weren't going to get these FPS numbers because you're limited by the system RAM and the VRAM, because you're splitting 8 and 8. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the Lenovo Legion Go compares with a little bit faster RAM, or I'll correct myself in the video, but I believe it is 75, or it's definitely higher than the ROG Ally, but I'll correct myself in the video there. So it'll be interesting to see the comparisons of the Z1 Extreme with the slower RAM and the faster RAM. Unfortunately, it's still going to be 16 gigabytes, so I'm not going to bother picking one up because there's really no point in comparing a 16 gigabyte Z1 Extreme, I don't think. Alright, so to wrap this video up, tried to keep it kind of short. I condensed a lot of things, so you're going to have to like kind of go through and see like the whole section for each device to see the kind of performance going through like FSR 1 quality, FSR 2 quality performance, and everything like that. For the most part, or pretty well for all the tests except the beginning. I think of the GPD Win Max 2, I kept everything on balance throughout. But yeah, so performance on Modern Warfare 3 is pretty damn good. It's basically Modern Warfare 2. I'm sure there's probably some minute performance differences, but it's running like the same engine. There's nothing kind of extravagant about it. There's no ray tracing, nothing like that. So we have FSR 2.1, FSR 1. FSR 1 is going to get you more FPS on the handhelds. That's just the way it always has been. Even going back to like Modern Warfare 2, running FSR1 on the ASUS ROG Ally was able to get us like well and above 100 FPS running 30 watts at like the basic textures and stuff. So I'm sure if you were to drop everything down to the basic or the minimum and drop it down to 720p, crank it up to 30 watts, I'm sure you could probably get a high refresh rate experience. But I'm more into my games of looking a little bit better versus running faster. I'm not a huge competitive FPS player, and I'm not going to be playing an FPS competitively on a handheld. I'll just play it on my computer or something docked, like with a keyboard and mouse. That's just me. But anyway, so to kind of wrap everything up, basically the 7840U is going to perform better than the Z1 Extreme most of the time. Whether you're having the 7400 megahertz transfer RAM or megahertz RAM on the GPD Win Max 2, we were still seeing a positive performance increase even with the 8 gigabytes. Mind you, we had 64 gigabytes of system RAM total, with the 8 gigabytes dedicated to VRAM. But going from that to the Ayaneo Air 1S with 7500 megahertz RAM, and then the ASUS ROG Ally being limited to 16 gigabytes as well as only 6400 megahertz RAM, you could see the massive performance difference that the Ayaneo Air 1S got with the 7500 megahertz RAM on the 7840U. We only had 32 gigabytes total RAM on that system, but it was still able to dedicate 8 gigabytes of VRAM and have more than enough left over for system RAM for the game at 1080p. So, in conclusion, if you're wanting to future-proof yourself for games really with a handheld, look for a device with 32 gigabytes of RAM. Unfortunately, there isn't a mainstream device yet that offers 32 gigabytes of RAM. I'm hoping it's not some exclusivity thing with the Z1 Extreme chip where they're only allowed to have 16 gigabytes of RAM and only allowed to have 32 gigabytes of RAM on the 7840U products. I doubt it's like that, and Lenovo even mentioned like, oh, we chose to go with 16 gigabytes of RAM for stability reasons, but there's all these other devices running 32, 64 gigabytes of RAM at higher speeds, and there's honestly like not a widespread stability issue. In some cases, some people are limited to those slower speeds, but they are still able to use the 32 gigabytes of RAM at least. And the 32 gigabytes of RAM is kind of the biggest differentiator of these devices now. You're going to want that 32 gigabytes of RAM on a Windows handheld so you can dedicate 8 gigabytes of VRAM if you're planning on playing at 1080p, and even at 720p it should help. It's not going to help as much as VRAM limited scenarios and 1080p, but it will help regardless. So if I were to have one device going forward, honestly, it would just be the Ayaneo Air 1S or the GPD Win Max 2 running the RAM at 7500 megahertz if I updated it to that. But honestly, the Ayaneo Air 1S is giving me the best performance across all the games that I've played, like off camera and on camera. But yeah, so that's just a little taste of like what Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 will run like on some of the handhelds and various chips and kind of system configurations with RAM. So anyway, to wrap things up, I'll just give a huge shout out to my channel members, Joey VR, Rico1217, Darkstar, Roy Wayne, Root Access, and P3C MKR. As always, you guys are amazing. I appreciate each and every one of you. Whether you're here for a short time, long time, doesn't matter. You guys are great. And as always, everyone watching this, sharing this, not sharing it, liking it, disliking it, commenting or not, I appreciate all of you as well. And as always, have a great day.